All right, so with us today is Dr. Evan Sinar. Is it Sinar or Sinar?
Sinar.
Fucked it up immediately. Sinar, who is the head of assessments at BetterUp. And he does a lot of work around assessments, including artificial intelligence and leadership and coaching and a whole, honestly, he has way too many Twitter followers. It's very upsetting. And when you look at everything that he talks about, it's a pretty wide range. Is that fair to say? You cover a lot of space.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think
I am fancy.
I don't know how to answer that, but yeah, I mean, I've had the chance to work in a consulting firm focused on leadership development. In the course of that got me into HR analytics and data visualization, and I was doing a lot of assessment work there, and then kind of branched off into between kind of the hiring space and development space. So yeah, a few opportunities to branch out a bit.
So of all of the things that you're doing right now, or I guess have done, what are you most excited about? What do you think is the most exciting?
Yeah, I mean, I think the role I'm in now, where I'm able to channel some of what I know about assessment, but then also the potential to do much more there. Most of my career was spent setting up assessments for hiring purposes, promotion purposes. So it's basically who's in, who's out, who's promoted, who's not, and that's fine. I mean, that's what an organization needs. But I think the role I'm in now, where it's very developmentally focused, really developmentally exclusive, I think it's bringing me around to how assessment can help the individual, not just the organization. And as IOs, I think we're always trying to find the right balance there. I mean, of course, we're helping the organization by helping the individual, and vice versa. By helping the organization, we're helping the individuals in that organization. But I think it is an opportunity to be more targeted with my work, applying it more specifically in a development context. And the reason why I think that's so exciting is we have the chance to actually see people across the span of their work, months, years, even in some cases, see how they grow, and then how we could help them grow individually. And that's energizing for me as part of the current role I'm in.
I completely agree with you. It's funny, I was actually just having this conversation with somebody about how as IOs, we tend to have this expectation that selection assessments solve everything and we want them to do everything in terms of performance and do all the heavy lifting in terms of performance. Right. Whereas so much of somebody's life is really within the organization. So what are we doing there? And there you are in that space using assessments as part of development. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you, I feel so old every time I talk about social media. I think it's tweeted, right? Tweeted about was something around loneliness at work.
Oh yeah.
And I found that particularly compelling because you're embedded as an employee. You're within a social structure within your organization. Sure. So what's up with this loneliness stuff?
Yeah, I mean that's work that my current company has been doing quite a bit on, and there's a parallel there with belonging also, which is kind of the opposite side of that. And so we've done some work about the role that plays in someone's experience within the organization. So we recently created, we feel it's a distinct view of employee experience, and as part of that, we want to make sure to include belonging because we feel it's that important as a driver of positive experiences in the organization. There's a lot of factors working against that. I mean, there's pressures with remote work, and how do you bring people who are working virtually to make them feel like they're still connected to the organization. I think there's different pressures placed on individuals in work, which sometimes can push them further apart than closer together. So some of our work has been about how the importance of allies at work. So even just having one or two other people who share your perspective on a topic can make you feel more connected to that group. And so we've done some work on how to really tease apart the cost and emergence of exclusionary behavior and how to combat that, and what organizations can be tracking to avoid that cropping up, because it's often a kind of hidden trend in organizations that they don't often spot, because it's often under the radar of some other sensing tools that they have. So that's been interesting for us to dig into.
So that to me has a really obvious connection to issues related to diversity and inclusion, right? You keep belonging, exclusion. Absolutely. Is that something that is intentionally a focus in your organization? Does it happen to just kind of be there and you realize this connection, or is it intentional?
Yeah, well, I think that's where I think there's a distinction even between diversity and inclusion. Diversity is often kind of the surface level some kind of tabulation of whatever the group is. And that's such a superficial way of thinking of it. I think belonging and loneliness, I think that gets more at the actual inclusion part of the definition.
Yes.
And I think as a field, we've started to make progress, probably a little bit slower than we could, away from diversity as a surface level characteristic to something that's deeper and embedded more in inclusion and how to bring people into that environment, really regardless of their backgrounds. And that's the other push and pull that I'm feeling is how to target diversity and inclusion initiatives. Is it targeted at a particular group? Is it targeted at everyone? And I think if it's not targeted at everyone, I think you lose the opportunity to bring in some of the power of the ally alongside, because often the ally might be from a different group than oneself. So I think we've seen some deepening there. I mean, the current SIOP president, Eden King, obviously has an immense passion there and background there and research there. So as I'm sure you're aware, the SIOP is just putting in place now its own chief diversity officer. Yeah. So we were really proud of that. I was really proud to be on the board when that was voted on and getting that in place. So yeah, absolutely. I think there are connections there with how SIOP as a field is progressing through more sophisticated and in more in-depth ways that we're approaching that D&I problem space.
I was going to say you went exactly where I wanted to go, which was moving from talking about what you do in your company to flipping that right into IO psychology. So One of the reasons why we have the IO soapbox is to improve awareness of IO psychology, to show off some of the cool work that IOs are doing, how it can be applied, and of course to show people that they belong in IO, that it's an awesome place to be. I'm obsessed with the field. Right. So from an inclusion perspective, from thinking about the sense of belonging and connection, a lot of our viewers are going to be potentially prospective graduate students for IO psychology.
Sure.
What would you say to them that might help them understand if this is the field that they're really going to connect with, or to show what IO has to offer, anything along those lines?
Well, I think we need a diverse field in IO, and of course the pipeline for that starts with the graduate students and the graduate programs, which that's our next generation. That's our bench strength. That's the next generation of SIOP leaders. And if we're truly going to meet the needs of organizations that themselves are putting so much attention towards diversity and inclusion, we're just not going to do that if we're not looking at the mirror ourselves and taking action there. It's a process. It takes time. It takes models. It takes others that can inspire people to join the field. We have so many strong contributors in the field, and I think the work of some of the current activities that SIOP itself is undertaking with Eden's leadership and the D&I officer. My hope is that will model SIOP as a field, because there's not a lot of other professional organizations that have a D&I officer, for example. So we're trying to institute that as a model. I think there are opportunities still. I think how we continue to bring people in to volunteer with the society. I think we're continuing to make that process itself feel inclusive. So I think we're poised to do that. I think there's a lot of energy to do that, but we're only going to succeed as a society and meet the needs of our the groups that benefit from our work if we're pulling that into our own organizations.
What do you like about IO? What's your favorite thing?
I mean, I think it's the perfect blend of very research driven, very evidence based. I mean, just as we heard at the LEC that we're just exiting, but also not losing track of the person centric, the fairness. I mean, those concepts have always been part of IO. So I think it's a way to change lives, on a mass scale in some ways. And I don't think there's a lot of fields like that can impact across such a broad range of individuals in organizations that employ hundreds of thousands of people. And we can truly shape that. And I think the appetite and opportunity for IO psychology has never been bigger. So all of that, between the evidence base and the application opportunities, I don't think there's a lot of fields that are that rich on both of those dimensions.
I agree, and I particularly liked your point that you made just a little bit earlier
Sure.
about being able now to focus on the person and not just the organization as you're thinking about development and enrichment. And I do think that's a beautiful thing that we get to do as IOs, is think not only of the groups but also of the people as human beings.
Absolutely.
So, out of respect for your time, because I know you got a jet, conference is over, time to go home. What do you have any final advice, like any piece of advice at all for people who are thinking about coming into IO psychology?
Well, I mean, I think just building on where the opportunities are and both what the needs are for an organization. I mean, I think it's a rapidly growing field. It's an opportunity to have impact very quickly. I think the skill sets that we develop in this field are very transferable. I mean, you see people that are in organizational development groups or in HR analytic groups or in all different facets of leadership. So I think there's an immense diversity and blend of opportunities that people have. So going into a program, I think, sets you up for success down many paths. So I would want people entering the field to realize not only how fertile the world is for what we can offer, but also how many different ways we can channel our talents to help individuals and organizations.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you coming to these chairs to talk with us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.